Right, good evening. Let me formally welcome you to Eton Bank Academy. I'm Ed O'Neill, I'm the head teacher at Eton Bank. And it's great to see so many people here tonight for what should be a really informative and useful evening on the topic of the Havannah Weir Hydro Project. Without further ado, I'm going to pass over to Pete Aston.
Good evening, everybody. This does feel to me, and one or two in the audience, like a long journey that we've got here. Compton Partnership is a group of Cheshire East Ward councillors, town councillors, businesses, community groups, charitable trusts and the like that work hard on trying to push the town forward in many aspects. Congleton Sustainability Group is one of, I think, 5 subgroups of the partnership. We formed all the way back in 2009. We've been almost here before too, because 2011, I think, we won £250,000 to put a hydro scheme on the town weir in Congleton by the pavilion in the park there, and fell foul of EU state aid rules. Slowly but surely, Havannah Weir, being a privately owned river, weir, land around it, was always going to be more difficult to develop. But the people that own the land became quite interested in the idea as a community project. And it has to be said that it's only through their willingness to be part of all of this that we can even be here presenting what we're presenting tonight. Dane Valley Community Energy was formed about 12 months ago. Havannah Weir, at the picture at the top, looks like any other weir. You need a person standing by the side of it, because actually that water drop is 4.1 metres. It's a weir with a great history. It powered 4 or 5 mills at times. There's been all sorts of stuff gone on in Havannah Village, from copper work to cigar and cigarette making, to silk, fustian and some cotton. The bit I like about this is we're following our forebears. Somebody had the brains back in about 110 years ago to connect an alternator to this lot, and it generated 100 kilowatts. It allowed, it was clearly for the mills, but one of the mill owners decided that the mill workers' cottages that are down in Havannah Village ought to have a bit of electricity too. So Havannah Village had power about 15 years or so before Congleton. Congleton was very late into electricity.
So, like all good schemes, you start with an artist's impression, and this is a concept just to show how such a scheme works. And we actually borrowed this from ACE, which is Aberdeen Community Energy. Yeah. I mean, there's, I don't know, Ollie will tell us more, but 100 such schemes around the UK, or more than that, and what have you. So we actually want to take the water. So we take the water, whipping in through here, comes down through. I'll come back to this equipment house, and drives an Archimedes screw. So the water's turning the screw. Then the screw is coupled to a generator, and then coupling that into the grid, or, as we're proposing to do, into a direct connection down into Eton Bank estate. So it should generate something like 60 kilowatts of electricity. Now, for those of you worried about climate change, I'm sure most of us are, this also gives us a saving of around about 240 tonnes of carbon dioxide per year. Here is the bridge coming down off Havannah Lane. Looking up towards Macclesfield, as Peter said, there's the weir and the old sluice gate. Now, we're not actually touching the weir, because the weir is, I don't know, 150 years old or something or other, and the rest, 300 years old or whatever. It's in superb construction. I mean, it's there, it's solid, but the last thing, if you haven't got drawings and what have you, the last thing you want to do is touch it, because who knows what will actually happen. And it's also a listed structure. It's grade 2 listed. Our plan is to actually take the water, the inlet, just a little bit upstream, comes down through, what do you call it?
Berry pipe.
A berry pipe, into the screw, you can see here, and then discharge just down here below the weir. And one of the advantages of this is that for those who have actually know this area, as Peter mentioned, certainly in the summertime, the amount of vegetation and what have you there, it'll be almost all screens. The only thing that will be visible is the outlet, and with careful design, that'll be fairly well sort of inconspicuous as well, as we're quite pleased about. So the view, which is a fantastic view from the bridge looking to the weir, is actually not spoilt at all, which is one of our key objectives.
We actually own and operate 14 of our own schemes, generate electricity, sell it. So we get hands-on and we know the ups and downs of operating a hydroelectric scheme. And that helps us very much when we try and design schemes for other people. We've now commissioned, or we are commissioning at the moment, our 70th scheme all around the UK, North Wales, Derbyshire, Yorkshire, Southern Scotland, Southern England. And we're working on several more at the moment. And then above and beyond that, we've actually got permissions and licences for other schemes that either haven't proceeded or other people then built. So we've grappled with the regulators up and down the country, which is probably the hardest part of the whole job. Every site is different, so all of our 70 projects that we've done are different. But they all have something in common, which is they all have head, drop, and flow. And Havannah Weir has both in good quantities. So you're fortunate, you've got a good amount of head. More than 4 metres is rare on a lowland river. Most of the schemes we do on lowland rivers are between 1.5 and 3 metres of fall. So 4 metres is excellent, and it's a decent sized river as well. And the combination of the head and the flow gives you the power. I say 60 kilowatts is a good amount of power. The majority of the schemes we've built are between 10 and 30, because that's what UK rivers tend to provide. So you're ahead of the game on this one. It's accessible. In other words, it's not in the middle of nowhere. You can get to it from a public road. You're within range of the grid or a major end user like Siemens. There's a choice there. And there is a piece of land that is available. So it ticks all the most important boxes. We've consulted with the Environment Agency, and they're on board as well. They've got no major concerns. So it's got good credentials, and I don't see any major showstoppers from that front. Just wanted to point out, for those of you who don't know the site, a couple of features. If I can point this. We've got the river coming down here. Now, we've got the intake structure, but up here is a plateau. So we've got an upper plateau. This is basically flat land here. And then we've got flat land along down here, a lower plateau. And there's 4 metres drop between the two. And to join those two pieces of land, there is a steep slope just here, just where the screw is going to be put. So the screw will actually be set into a steep slope. Because we haven't got contours on here, it's not easy to appreciate that, but if you know the site, you'll appreciate there's a steep slope, so the screw sits into that. I tried to think what was the most similar scheme that we've done that had this upper plateau, lower plateau, steep slope, Archimedes screw. And there is one that we did in Worcestershire 5 years ago on the River Weir, and I'm just going to show you some pictures of that. It's a slightly smaller scheme, but not much. And I think that'll give you a very good idea as to the key elements of how this scheme might be put together. So this is the scheme, and again we've got a river, a weir, and an upper plateau here, and a low level here, and a steep slope, a steep riverbank all along here. And that's what we set the Archimedes screw, which is this, into. This is the intake structure. Now the river is immediately to my left, but as we would at Havannah Weir, if I had anything to do with it, we would build the intake in dry land behind the riverbank and then just cut through to the river right at the end. So there's no chance of causing a contamination or siltation event. You use the riverbank itself as your bund and you build behind it. So this is now our nice solid structure. This is an intake screen that keeps out the shopping trolleys and the dead sheep. The water then goes through a sluice gate here into a buried pipe. At the other end of the pipe is the Archimedes screw and the control shed. So there'll be more pictures of that, but that just gives you a feel. And here you can see there's a steep slope down, and the whole system is set back into that. This screw was 2 metres in diameter and 6 metres long. just to put a scale on it, comes in one lump. I think that was about 4 tons. And it gets lowered into place once you've built your concrete walls. The civil engineering is fairly basic. You're literally just building yourself a sloping concrete channel. Very basic civil structures. Keeps the cost down. Let's give you a feel what it looked like from across the river. Because it's set into the bank, you can hide, you build this concrete and then you pretty much hide it into the bank. The screw shaft rotates at a relatively low revs per minute. In this case, it'll be 30-something revs per minute. That's too slow to connect directly to a generator because generators like to go fast. So you have to have a gearbox to accelerate from one to the other. The generator will typically be going at 1,000 revs, so we're going to get from 35 to 1,000, and that's normally done with a gearbox, which is this blue box up here. Contains intermeshing wheels that take a slow speed and come out with a fast speed. And this particular gearbox is a right angled one, so the shaft comes in here, goes through all the gears, and comes out vertically and drives the generator on the top there. And out of the generator comes 50 hertz grid quality electricity that you can then send off to whoever wants it. Who looks after it? Well, it's done by computer. Computer controls it, checks everything's okay, shuts it down if something's wrong, varies the flow that comes in from the river automatically. So this may interest you. This particular screw, as most of the modern screws today, will operate at variable speed. That means if there's more water in the river, the screw will speed up and take more water. If there's less water, it will slow down. So it's just responding to the amount of water in the river. How does it know how much water is in the river? All it does is it has one pressure sensor upstream, dipped in the water, fixed to the intake structure that you saw, and it's just measuring the water level. Because if you have more water going over Havannah Weir, you have a thicker slab of water going over the weir. It means the water level has come up. And all the control system is doing is saying, we want to keep the water level the same, within a 10mm band actually. If the water level goes above that band, it says, I can speed up a bit. If it goes below, it slows down a bit. And it's checking that every 15 seconds, typically. And most of the time it does nothing, because it stays the same, stays the same, stays the same. But if the river's rising, it'll slowly ramp up and speed up, take more water, but keeping the water level the same, keeping the weir looking exactly the same. Eventually the screw is running flat out, can't go any faster, and any more water coming down the river, it just goes over the weir, and the weir fills up. The Environment Agency regulate all these schemes very tightly, and they set the rules in terms of what level they want to see over the weir, so that is always guaranteed to make sure that the weir looks good, there is still a decent splashing flow over the weir. So there will still be a visual impact from the weir, so you'll get the noise from the weir, by the way. That will be retained, and it's only the spare water above that the hydro is allowed to use. What that means is that for about a quarter of the year, the hydro will be stopped. Probably not a continuous quarter. It might shut down for a dry week, and then it'll rain, it'll run for a few days, and then it'll dry out again. A typical scheme like this would generate 70% of its energy in the winter. So the 6 wetter months, October to March, 30% in the summer, and you can often find that in May or June you're shut down for a few weeks, August, September is shut down for a few weeks. Just to stress again the steep slope and so on. In the case of Havannah, the main difference is that the tail race, which in this case is just this little short piece of concrete, is extended further to get back to the river. There's the slightly unusual layout of Havannah of this upper plateau and lower plateau, with the slope being set back into the land. That's quite unusual. But what that means is it allows us to distance the scheme sort of into the wood, and therefore it's surrounded by wood, trees and shrubs, which will make it invisible from almost all angles. It's very heavily oxygenated, it's quite frothy, and then it just settles down and it just merges back into the stream.
So, where are we timescales? Planning permission, Environment Agency permission, although Ollie mentioned we've had initial discussions that say there does not appear to be anything insurmountable. But when you're in the hands of the planning authorities and the environment authorities, is how long is a piece of string. These schemes are supported by DEFRA, Department for Food and Rural Affairs. A subset of them is called RAP. They're involved in waste projects as well. And they support such schemes, and here they're supporting us with a loan of just over £66,000. That will cover the cost of the next stage.
Well, I'm a bit sort of enthusiastic about renewables. My house runs on biomass, and we've got PV on the roof. We've got 50 kilowatts worth of PV on the factory in Congleton. I did actually look at buying a Weir in Bollington, but I was pipped to the post. So we provide, that blue thing, which was the gearbox. We provide the motor. We hook it up to some power electronics, which Andrew's company builds. And that generates energy which we then put back modulated onto the grid. So in preparation for the Weir I thought I was going to buy, I'd kept a 100 kilowatt motor, gearbox, drive, control cabinet from a development we'd done with a wind turbine company, which is of a value of circa £60,000-70,000 if we were going to sell it. So what we're going to do as HMK for the local community is donate that hardware into the project. Now the good thing I heard from Ollie was the input speed to from the screw is 30 RPM, and I said to Danielle, one of my colleagues, perfect, because that's exactly what the turbine was. So the gearbox is right for that, so we're all right, sorted. And we're looking to use this project, the automation hut, as a means of actually using this information. You've probably heard about the Internet of Things, Industry 4.0. This is taking information from the turbine, putting it onto the internet and analysing, is it going to fail? When should we turn it off? So we want to use that as an educational piece for local schools, for our engineers, to demonstrate sort of what we can do with automation technology in terms of generating, because normally motors in the world are the biggest consumer of electricity. So it's nice to think that a motor can actually generate some electricity as well. So that's what our involvement is, and Andrew here, hopefully he's a willing customer.
I haven't got much choice, but it's no. I mean, from our side, from Siemens' side, we're delighted to be involved in this. Within our factories now, globally, within Siemens and outside of Siemens, we've got a challenge. How do we make our factories more productive? Many of you will have heard of, the UK is lagging other countries, Germany, Japan, France. And one of the problems is, how do you get data from the machines up into, we'll call it the cloud, so that you can start to analyse and work out how you can make your processes more efficient. If we can get this sort of analytic capability in our schools, where kids are starting to analyse data because it's in one place and start to derive conclusions, we're starting to get into this world that Carl talked about of the Internet of Things. And then the last reason we're doing this is we're starting to have more and more customers from all over the world coming to Congleton to see our products. And yes, our products are the drives, the gearboxes that Carl talked about. So as well as inviting them into our factory, I want to be able to say, and we've got a special story for you. We're going to then transport them down to the Weir and actually show them
on a rainy day.
A real application. So I couldn't have framed this better if I started with a clean sheet of paper. It's fantastic, and we'll do everything we can to support it.
So we're going to try and find opportunities to fit this into the school year, because there's some great things here. And maybe one of the things we've been thinking about is a video diary of the whole of the project, because it values sort of education to the kids, but also to people who run future schemes. We'll see. It's going to cost, in round figures, £500,000. And these schemes are funded by the local communities in the main, with people buying a share in the scheme. When we actually come to the stage of actually saying, right, we now need to come up and actually start the work and so on. We're going to raise this £500,000. We'll end up releasing a share prospectus. And typically, the minimum shareholding is £100, and the maximum is I'm incorrect there, it's actually £100,000. So it's a community scheme, it's a community microhydro scheme. And coming back to Peter's starting point, the Compton Partnership and the sustainability, the community sustainability. So our key financial sort of driver, I suppose, is we've got to generate a minimum of £5,000 per year, call it profit or surplus out of the scheme, to go into community projects. And so we're keen to involve people who live in the locality to actually come and give their suggestions as to how they think the scheme can actually work properly. And this is where we also need your help. We now need to increase our depth and breadth of skills. So it'd be useful to have one of our project team, somebody who's got legal knowledge. We're going to get to the stage where we need health and safety knowledge, project planning, risk management and web design and social media support. It's amazing, when the river is in full spate, the amount of rubbish that will come downstream. And for those of you who've seen the Weir, I mean, just before Christmas, a big stream across it. So we need, all schemes like this have a group of enthusiastic volunteers who are out every day, including Christmas Day with the rakes, raking the debris out and so on. And we've been to look at quite a few of these schemes around the UK, and one of the things that we've been happily surprised on the number of volunteers who actually do come out to keep the scheme operational.
This project is magnificent, and if we pull it off, it'll be an endeavour that I think we can all be hugely proud of. But for me, part of it is to keep going and add momentum to more renewable energy in the town. And renewable energy can come in all sorts of forms. A couple of 3 years ago, we wouldn't have been talking about battery storage with PV. Now it's the live topic. It'll change again and again and again over the next 20 years. For me, this is about highlighting renewable energy in a very powerful way so that our children and their children can look at renewable energy and say, Congleton did something, and it begot this, and it begot that, and it just started an explosion of renewable energy. And some of those will be part of Dane Valley Community Energy Project.
Could I ask for a show of hands as to those in favour of the scheme in principle, please? That's brilliant, thank you. And just to complete it, anybody against it? That's brilliant. Thanks very much indeed.